Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where today we're checking out a system that didn't get its own official light gun, so the third parties had to step up, and Namco did it in style with the GunCon. The GCon 45, or the GunCon as it was also known, was released by Namco in 1994, and this is quite obviously the point-blank bundle, but it was sold separately as well as bundled with a few versions of Time Crisis. The box is very much about showing off the bundled game with just a few pictures of the gun. It doesn't really go into its features all that much, mostly warning you that the gun won't work with some TVs. Inside the box we get a copy of the game, and we get another box and inside that we have the GunCon itself, as well as this extra adapter. Unfortunately I don't have the instructions, which is a shame because there is a bit more setup than most for this gun. If we take a more detailed look at the GCon, we can see it's quite a chunky gun, and it looks like something out of Robocop or Judge Dredd. The design and colour is quite surprising after the previous generation tried really hard not to be mistaken for a real weapon. In terms of buttons, we have a single trigger at the grip, and then we have two extra buttons up front. These are labelled A and B. It has quite the thick cable that ends with the standard PlayStation controller port, but there is also this extra plug, which is where the booklet would have come in handy as we tried to set it up. It seems Namco wasn't happy with the accuracy they could get out of the base hardware, so they used this connector to take the video output to help them work out where the gun was pointing. There were many variations of the PlayStation, but there's two main ones that we need to talk about. The earlier design, which had the three AV connectors, and so the cable just simply connects to the yellow connector, but to save costs Sony removed these, and so if we want to get the composite signal we need to use their extra box. This simply acts as a pass-through that allows you to connect another video cable to the end, but there is this extra port on the side that we can use with the gun. You have to have this set up as the GunCon won't work without it. So with all that done, let's check out some games. And where else can we start but with Point Blank? This is the first game, but there were quite a few of them, and if you're interested in its history, then I might know someone who did a complete history on the series. The basic idea behind Point Blank is you have a bunch of quick-fire games that you need to complete, with you being scored on a number of criteria like your speed as well as your accuracy. These mini-games are full of silly characters, situations and ideas. It's like the light gun version of WarioWare, if you will. The PlayStation release contains the original arcade game, in which you get to select your difficulty level, then you have to work your way through a series of games. You get some limited control over its order, but you'll have to play them all, including the dreaded Very Hard. These games can vary from shoot X number of targets, scoring you on your accuracy, to having a limited number of bullets to hit a set number of targets. It might sound like there isn't much in the way of variation, but you'd be wrong, as the how, where and why changes for every single game. And on top of all that, there will be bombs and penalty targets that if you shoot will cause you to lose a life. You'll also lose a life if you fail the goal. Being a faithful arcade conversion would have been enough, but Namco really went all out on this release, as on top of the arcade mode there is a range, which has a number of new additions including training mode that unsurprisingly gives you a number of ways of improving your game, special, in which the arcade game gets some new stages added to it, but there's also the cool mode, Quest, which is a story-driven light gun RPG, which tasks Dr. Don and Dr. Dan on a quest to find the gun ball on Point Blank Island. You move them around the island by pointing and shooting where you want to go, and then you get random battles very much like Final Fantasy. Which basically resolve into these fights, which are really just regular stages. Fail them and you lose health, complete them and you'll get money, experience and upgrades. You even get to buy items and health. It really does play out like those classic RPGs. There is even support for 2 players, or just 1 player who likes to dual wield like in the movies. This is so silly and yet so much fun. The next game is the other bundled title, Time Crisis, which was another arcade shooter. If you've not heard of Time Crisis before, then its special hook was that you could control when you were in and out of cover. In the arcade, this was done via a foot pedal. But at the home, it's done with one of the buttons on the GunCon. Being in cover typically protects you from being shot as well as environmental hazards, and if you stay in it long enough, it'll also reload the gun. But you're always up against the time, so you need to pop out and take those shots quickly. This version, as we can see, retains all the amazing set pieces and the environment changing events from the arcades, which was something that wasn't all that easy to pull off in 2D or with pre-rendered sequences, so this was very special. You can also shoot the environment. Sometimes this is just to help you get a clearer shot. Other times it might just be for cool effects. Reload. But every so often there's explosives, and they are great for clearing out large number of enemies. And this wouldn't be much of an arcade if there wasn't bosses, who, as you might expect, are faster and take more shots than normal grunts to take down. That's not to say those grunts aren't deadly. They have a range of weapons, unlike you who are stuck with a single pistol through the entire game. And these include rockets, machine guns and grenades. They also like to hide and pop out of the oddest of places, and all seem very energetic. They are also colour coded, so you know which ones you need to take out first, like the red. Or if you see ones in orange, then you need to take them down pretty quickly, as they can get you extra time. And if you finish the main game with the provided 8 credits and you want something more, then you get to tackle the special game. This was a whole new game just for the PlayStation. Not only that, but it's also non-linear. Or at least you get to take multiple routes through the game depending on your actions, which is a really fun idea, and takes what could be quite a short game and makes it much longer. One problem I do have with the game and the gun is the way you have to hold it so you can use the second button, as you can't really take your hand away from it as you're constantly needing to press it and release it to go in and out of cover. If these buttons were nearer the grip, it would have been nicer. Thankfully, there is a solution. If you plug a controller into port 2, then any of the face buttons will actually act as the second button. So you can just place it on the floor and step on the controller. Make sure you use socks or slippers. I don't think you should be stepping on a controller with your boots. Amazingly, there are actually some third parties that actually made pedals, or even bundled their own ones with their clones, which is quite cool. It turns out this wasn't the only gun released for the PlayStation, as just as they did with the previous generation, Konami released the Justifier, also known as the Hyper Blaster in some regions, and both guns were incompatible with each other. So you had games that would only work with the Justifier, aka the SLEH00005, or the ones that would only work with the GCon, aka the SLEH00007. Thankfully, some games actually supported both. And if you weren't in the market to buy both guns, there were actually some third-party ones that would actually support both with a little switch. let's check out two of those games, Judge Dredd and Maximum Force. Both came out in 1997, the same year that Time Crisis hit the PS1, with Dredd being made by Gremlin Interactive and Maximum Force being made by Atari. Both used pre-rendered 3D graphics played out as video sequences. Though they did use different ways of drawing the baddies. Judge Dredd used 3D models that was drawn on top of it, which did make them stand out a little bit from the background, and to be honest they tended to just fade in or suddenly appear on screen, and tended to do the exact same thing when taken down. Maximum Force on the other hand used digitized actors, who also tends to stand out from the background they're on, but they do tend to come in off the screen or pop out of hidey holes, though when they die they do have these large blood splatters to hide them fading away. They also share in common having innocence that will show up from time to time that you have to avoid shooting, and as is the trope, they seem to have a death wish as they'll just show up at the worst times and try and run out in front of your shots. Though thankfully they're not the only things that you can shoot at, as the backgrounds aren't completely static, as you can shoot and damage them. Sometimes they will reveal upgrades, and other times it's mostly just for show. But those upgrades are abundant in both games, from weapon upgrades to screen clearing smart bombs. You just have to be on the lookout for them, though some might be more painful to use than others, as both games will flash the screen white to help the gun track where it's pointing at. So rapid fire guns will result in lots of screen flashing. These really were a dying breed of light gun games, as Virtua Cop pioneered, and then Time Crisis used with such skill, full 3D shooters were the future. And Namco made quite a few of them going forward, as they released something like 13 games for the PS1. With the third parties releasing 4 games that also supported the GCon. And these were not just simple games either, there were quite a lot of great arcade conversions as well as brand new, unique games. It's clear to see that Namco brought their arcade skills when they made this light gun, even if it is missing the recoil from the arcade. But it's a great gun that works really well, and might be one of the best third-party releases we've ever seen. And if you had a favourite game that used it, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. So until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was Namco aiming for the top spot, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching my video, I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can let me know down in the comments, or you can use those buttons just below, you know the ones I mean. Or if you're not sure yet, then you can check out 2 other videos that I've done that are on the screen right now. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.